Welcome to Ravenloft, land of the mists, where evil hides beneath every bed, crawls from every shallow grave, and lurks within every shadow.
I'm your Game Master. Joining me tonight is the Paladin and Champion of Tamora, Horrocks van Buzen. Welcome, Horrocks.
Thank you, Dungeon Master.
Joining Horrocks on his continuing quest, Chapter 3, Death Unchained, is his oldest friend and only link to the past, the former thief, Donovan Weathermay. One of the two twins, the hunter, Lori Foxgrove, and her twin sister, the abjurer, Jennifer Foxgrove. The holy cleric and priest of Tamora, Father Dominic, and finally, our other player character who will not be joining us tonight, but hopefully will be soon, is the young paladin and Tamora's fate maker, Prudlin Gluck. Also, currently traveling with our group is Sergeant Stanislaus Fiedler, a Volkovnian Talon, former Volkovnian Talon and turncoat that is joined Horrocks, having been won over by his faith, by Horrocks' faith, has joined them on their trip to Lekar. So Horrocks, as you can see, just southeast of the city of Lekar, mere hours from the capital of Volkovnia, you and your companions ultimately came upon a cabin, a hunter's cabin in the woods.
Hey, do we think they were mother and daughter, those two?
Thinking back on it, Horrocks, as you are stepping out into this snow-covered meadow, there was a resemblance. Their horrific appearance didn't make it easy to see it initially, but the spirit, the child's spirit, spoke often of daddy and mommy. She seemed to be fixated on parents. Although at this point you're confident that you'll never know for sure, your companions, having forced the cabin door, the hunter's cabin door open, have allowed you to exit. Immediately, Father Dominic and Jennifer Foxgrove step up and grab Hrudland, who staggers as he's exiting, leaning all of his weight on the battle spear of Tamora, using it almost like a crutch. As he steps out, you see he staggers. Father Dominic catches him, pulls him out. Looking to your right, you can see walking beside Taish is Lori, Jennifer's sister. She clearly has returned with your mount, not even leading her by the bridle, just patting her on her neck. Donovan immediately steps up, Stanislaus behind him. What happened in there? What happened to Hrudland? He points at Hrudland as he staggers and almost falls.
Once we got in, we couldn't get out until we laid the souls to rest. Seemed like a mother and daughter. Anyway, Hrudland took the worst of it. I did warn him.
I'm sure Dominic can help him. Are you all right?
Well, other than Hrudland being badly wounded, It's it hurts me to see him get hurt.
Yes, but are you all right? Okay.
I'll look at myself. I'll take let me. I don't really know, actually, man. I'm shaken up. I don't know.
Here, sit down. You
I'm
can
pretty
see that
shaken up.
Dominic and Jennifer literally sit Hrudlin down in the couple of inches of hard snow that's still on the ground outside of this cabin, and Father Dominic begins to pray over him. You sit down, still having access to your lay on hands, Horrocks, should you choose to. You were wounded or down some hit points, if you recall.
Yeah, I'll do that.
So, now how much does your lay on hands?
22, I think.
All right. So,
2 per level.
22.
Which is pretty badass. And one of the, when I lay on hands and I say those prayers, Tamora, heal me, show me that you are still with me.
All right.
And that's one of like the telling things that I know my tether to her has not been lost when I'm on a daily basis when I'm able to wake up and say those prayers and see the effects of them is very comforting.
Horrocks, you're gonna drop right there in the snow and pray.
Yeah.
All right. It is almost completely dark here now in this meadow around this hunter's cabin. You drop to your knees and pray. I have you. What, are you at 39 hit points?
We should be on the token. Let's see here. 39.
All right. Horrocks, you pray and you find yourself distracted. You're not sure, did I drink my tea this morning? Struggling. About halfway through your prayer, what was that? You don't feel the same warmth. You are healed, Horrocks, for 17 points. Something's wrong. And you open your eyes, having finished your prayer to the goddess, and you can see almost at the exact moment that you look over, Father Dominic opens his eyes from his prayer and immediately looks at you. He's kneeling over Hrudlin at this point, who is way worse for wear than you are, having suffered some pretty horrific attacks from the spirits, the specters inside the hunter's cabin. And you see the lines that crease his face are those of concern. He stares at you just quietly, as if he's experiencing something similar to what you just experienced.
It's what I always fear. Having my powers diminished.
Father Dominic says something quietly to Jennifer, who you can see
roll a wisdom check
kneeling next to him.
For like what's going on. My relative understanding, or my experience anyway, with ghosts and the core. How about I roll a d20?
Sure. I just realized that I don't have your sheet in front of me, so you're going to have your sheet here.
I have it. 8. That makes it.
All right, Horrocks.
I think my wisdom went up, actually. That's when I lost a little strength from age. My wisdom went up.
Horrocks, going through your memory, especially early on when you had first assumed the mantle of being one of Tamora's paladins, and possibly her only paladin until Hrudlin arrived here in in the core. You felt at times that when you had prayed, especially in unusual or particularly dire circumstances, even moments in Barovia when you were in the presence of great evil and things, almost as if there was something that interfered or created a distance between you and the goddess. You're feeling that now. You're like, it's almost as if you're shouting through fog at the goddess with your prayers, and she's hearing them. But
let's move on. Let's get out of here.
Father Dominic comes over and touches you on the shoulder as you've kind of sitting there now, kind of, why is this not the same? You feel it, he asks.
Is this my horse? I'm going over to Taish. Yes, I feel it. Is this Taish?
Yeah.
Yay. Hi, Taish.
Yes.
I'll look for Belasco too. I'll call him down to be with us in our time of worry.
Immediately dropping from the eave of the hunter's cabin, sitting in a spot cleared by one of the griffins that now lay as corpses here in the meadow, Taish or Belasco lights on your shoulder from above. Oh, I got your little Belasco sound effect.
Nice. Thanks. Excellent.
He seems to take comfort in having Taish returned. If you recall, Belasco kind of followed Taish off. It's clear that their bond, it's almost as if the three of you are bonded at this point. And reaching up, petting Taish, and looking over your shoulder at the corpses of these three great beasts reminds you of just how fragile your companions, not Hrudland, Taish, Belasco.
Maybe we should go back to Mordenshire. I think this might be it.
But the Tamora's luck was with all of your companions, and you survived what potentially was going to be.
And I look at Hrud and I'm like, oh, I don't know.
Jennifer helps him up, but you can see he is clearly like gimping along using
what
the
happened
spear.
What can you describe that scene when he got attacked by the ghost?
He was struck several times once by each of the spirits, I believe, both the child and the woman that were imprisoned essentially within inside this, and on both occasions he suffered a horrific, cold, weakening sensation that left him initially almost unable to stand up. And with the second hit, even worse, it almost toppled him over. And that combined with the assault of physical objects, which you also experienced, being tossed about the room. He was struck with a chair that buried a long splinter in his neck. I am going to roll for, he was partially healed here by Father Dominic. But Dominic clearly is recognized the same weakness that you experienced. Stanislaus approaches you, Horrocks. This my uncle's farm is not far. Should you Zoas do not think that it would well,
Stanislaus, this area is so evil. Like, I'm really worried about the well-being of your relatives, and I'm not so sure we should be doing any visiting. I'm not even so sure we should. I'm okay with me being here, but I might want to. I'm not kidding. I might want to get these girls back to Mordenshire. This is not good.
All right. The rest of your group kind of gathers around as the sun is setting here. There's no problem. You wish not to stay at my uncle's aunt's farm. This is no trouble. There is a barn. Lager's barn on the property is also not far from here. This barn is abandoned. If you are still wish to travel into the city of Lekar and leave some of these folk in a safe place, either my uncle's farm or the barn.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds like a better option. And Donovan and Jennifer could reconnaissance up to it ahead of time to make sure it's not a compromised location, Yes. So that sounds good.
These lands are protected. My uncle.
We could also do the same thing with your relatives, actually. Maybe that's a better way to handle it. I would like to have a trustworthy base of operation, but
this is my uncle has helped others in the past, but he's cautious with those he trusts, understanding that if he should help any of these folk, such as yourselves, this puts him and his wife at risk. The decision is yours. I'm sure he would offer his help to us should you ask, but if you should choose to not involve him, the Lager's camp is a place where we could seek temporary shelter. This is on the property as well, and his property is protected as he provides food for Vlad's troops.
Yeah, I need to pause it for a minute. Well, probably like 3 minutes.
Do you want me to pause?
Yeah.
Donovan looks over at you with concern, and if he clearly isn't voicing all of his concerns, you can tell by his face, but we need to find a place to be. We can't stand here in the forest after dark.
Thank you for thinking of it.
Stanislaus looks, and as if expecting an answer from you, like, would you be interested in the logging camp's barn, or do you want to go to his uncle's?
No, let's go to the barn, but before we approach that place, conditions permitting, we'll send Donovan and remind me Laurie's condition. Is she okay?
Yeah, they're fine. They nobody else.
What did you guys endure while we were in there in that cabin? Anything going on here?
Father Dominic speaks up. He's for a frantic few minutes. We were trying to bash the door down. It seemed almost as if there was a wall beyond it. It took. Well, that was the longest couple of minutes of our lives before we were able to break it in.
Oh, you did eventually break it in.
And you, thinking back, you can remember as you dumped the last bit of dirt onto the shallow grave you dug and said your prayer, placing the spirits at rest almost simultaneously.
That's when they were able to break it in. I got it.
But even there, you were in there longer. You were in there 15 minutes, 20 minutes at least, because it didn't take long once you entered for those spirits to interact. And you hacked at that door with the axe of the Volpwood, and you know that axe is, if it comes to a wooden barrier or a tree, that axe is without compare in terms of chopping through wood or wooden objects, and it almost seemed to glance and bounce off of the doors it hits. There was something more to this place than met the eye when you first arrived. But the door still sits open. Hrudlin does eventually get to his feet and stand on his own. But you can see his face is white, like he looks exhausted. Like he stands. Jennifer seems to stand next to him, hands out, as if she's ready to brace his fall should he fall over. still out of his neck. You can see the bandage that covered his neck that Jennifer applied, and the healing spell that was cast on him by Father Dominic have stopped the bleeding from that particularly vicious wound that he had. But he does not look well, whether it's from loss of blood or the touch of the undead. He is not in a good way. These woods, none of these woods in Falkovnia are safe after dark. We should make for this the barn before it gets too late, Stanislaus encourages.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's do it. Let's go.
Same marching order as before. You, Stanislaus, Lori, Donovan, Dominic, Jennifer, and Frudland taking up the rear.
I think maybe keep Frudland next to me. I don't know.
Jennifer actually steps up to you. Quietly, as if not to embarrass Frudland. Is there any way I'll carry my pack if there's room for him on Taish? He's not well. He's sick. Something's wrong with him.
Yes.
He won't admit it.
Yeah, that sounds good.
He'll do what you tell him to do.
Yeah, I'll tell him to get on Taish. Frudland, Taish needs a rider. You're the guy. Don't say another thing. Just tell him.
He looks down at the ground, looks up, walks over, climbs onto Taish. You watch him without a word. He follows your order. You still have your rifle in hand, sitting next to the cabin where you'd gone in there, and you head off. And as you're walking away, Horrocks.
So I didn't heal at my full healing. Is that what you said?
You did not. You only healed about 70. You healed 75% of what you should be healing. Something is interfering with your conduit to.
Well, I added the full amount. So.
Oh, okay, that's fair.
That's fair. Very diplomatic of you.
As you walk away, Horrocks, you can hear Belasco almost purring, as ravens are known to do, in your ear before taking flight, enjoying the last little bit of light that remains from the sun has already set, but the snow that coats the ground kind of leaves a bit of ambient light around you as you walk away, and looking over your shoulder and past all of your companions, just as you get probably about 100 yards from the cabin, you can see standing in front of the cabin in the snow that you had just occupied, a woman and a child. The child stands in front of the woman. Her head barely comes up to the woman's waist. The woman has both of her hands on the child's shoulder. The child, you can see, is carrying what appears to be a small silver mirror in her hands, grasping it in front of her. They look at you as you walk back. You can see Donovan kind of glances over his shoulder as if, what are you looking at? Like, looks back and then looks back forward as if he's not seeing what you're seeing, Horrocks. And an instant, they start to turn as if they're walking away from this cabin to the right, headed south. And with a breeze blowing some of the snow, the remaining snow off of this cabin's roof, they vanish from sight.
I think I was spacing out. What was the description of this? Was it the two? Was it the two I put to...
Both the woman and the child standing outside of the cabin. And with that, you head off and continue on your trip. You don't have much further to go, according to Stanislaus. He seems to, he reassures you that it's a short distance to the loggers' camp and the barn that they once used for their horses. It's the only remaining structure that remains at that camp. This camp was on his uncle's property before his uncle even started to farm here. So it sounds like this is an old place, but it's less than an hour as you cutting through the forest. The floor of this bare forest is still covered in snow. The trees have all taken on black silhouettes against it. Luckily, it's a clear night, which means a lot of moonlight and starlight provides sort of a nice ambient and allows you and your companions to move along without the need of additional lighting that might give away your position. And you can see across what is clearly, probably in the spring and summer, a plowed field. But now it's just bare. No trees, nothing. It just is flat ground covered in snow. And you can see beyond that a black structure, completely dark, but it's large. It stands in stark contrast to the open field in front of you. That is Zaban. And he points across this field. It's clear that Stanislaus has deliberately led you to a place where it's a good you could see it, but it's a good distance to where the barn is. And your party comes to a halt. What do you want to do?
Get Donovan to do a little reconnaissance.
Actually moved a little closer. Donovan walks up, looks at Lori. Just want us to have a look?
I think it's best. At least see if anyone's been here.
Yeah, I agree. Lori?
Hrudlin's injured, and honestly, if it wasn't for the child, I would leave. So, yeah, we need to be super cautious.
Lori walks up at Donovan's request and looks. You can see she's scanning the area too, and she says, "There's a hedgerow there." She points kind of to the northwest. There's a hedgerow there, probably a break between fields. We can make our way along there. We'll be back 15, 20 minutes at the most. She says to you, Horrocks.
All right, do it.
And the two of them head off. Belasco is now landed on the saddle horn on Taisha's back, sitting just in front of Hrudlin, and the rest of your companions wait patiently as you see Donovan and Lori, after about 50 yards, vanish among the tree trunks, the blackened shadows or silhouettes of tree trunks. And you don't see them again. You don't see them head for the hedgerow. You keep your eyes open, watching the entire time, but you never see them enter or leave this hedgerow that Lori had pointed out, which probably forms sort of a natural barrier between two large, what are likely fields of grain, as you've been in Lekar, or I'm sorry, you've been in Falkovnia in the summertime, and grain is one of their primary resources that is farmed in this area for feeding the troops. And about 20 minutes goes by with nothing, no sign or indication of what Donovan or Lori had found.
Well, we lost them. They're goners. Oops.
And then, as if appearing out of the darkness, and now you're like, the sun had set, and even the starlight and the moonlight only provide you with like really good vision for maybe 20, 30 yards, and then after that it's just sort of blurred. Donovan and Lori both come from the same direction that they had exited or left the party from, and the two of them are clearly having a quiet conversation as they walk up. Donovan steps up. It's empty. There's no one around. Doesn't look like anyone's been here in quite some time, just as Stanislaus had described. Yes, there's nothing there. I'm surprised this place is still standing. Yeah, it's in disrepair, but it would definitely provide shelter for the night. And it looked like there's an old iron stove that could provide some place to cook, some heat. This is why I thought that this would be the place to go. Stanislaus says.
Let's move on there then.
All right,
What's the temperature?
It's actually not. Finally, for this night, it's right around freezing. You think it's cold, and you're required to. It would definitely be beneficial to have a fire simply for warmth at this point. But it does seem to the worst of winter is behind you, and now it seems as if you're finally exiting the cold and entering into spring. And Falkovny actually has a beauty all its own in the spring and summer, as it's a fairly anywhere outside of the settlements and roads, it does have some natural beauty in terms of its flora and fauna. You arrive at the barn, Horrocks, marching across this open field with Tyche Crudlin riding on his back, closely followed by and watched over by both Dominic and Jennifer. Donovan, Lori, and Stanislaus kind of form a line alongside of you, and you approach this place. You can see one of the barn's doors is broken, but still attached at one hinge, but broken off, creating an opening. And as you walk up, you can see the area where either Donovan or Lori had approached and looked in, and it's just as they had described. You step inside of this place, and it's pitch black in here, requiring you to light one of your light sources.
I'll do it.
An instant after you light your small lantern, you see the entirety of this long barn. Whatever it once housed, and it looks like there may have been stalls along one side at one point, but now it almost just appears as a wide open area with a hayloft filling the back end of it, and below that an area at the back where there was probably a wall that either fell down or was torn down. But you see the iron stove that Donovan had described. There was only two entrances, one at the front and one at the rear into this barn. There are no windows save for the rear hayloft. There is a door, it looks like, on the second level of that. But it certainly provides cover, and you immediately feel the breeze that was blowing outside across that open field is... you don't feel it anymore. It's gotten quiet. And approaching the back of the barn, you approach that iron stove, and you can see while it's rusted and not in the best, it's in ill repair, it still will certainly serve its purpose. Its pipe, the stovepipe, still leads out the side of the barn, and this was probably an area where the loggers during the day would gather. You can see that there's looking about the floor in here, you actually see several rusted iron kettles and pots. They won't be useful to you, but they were clearly useful to somebody that once cooked on this iron stove. There is broken pieces of what were probably stall walls and the wall of this area in the back that look like they've been kind of roughly piled in an area as if somebody had scavenged some of the interior of this barn to provide fuel for the iron stove, although it looks like it's probably been quite some time since that happened. This is a place where my uncles would allow those seeking to escape the city of Lekar to stay. This fearing that should they be discovered in his home would result in a tragedy for my uncle. And you can see Stanislaus is seeing the same thing you are. He kind of explains why it looks like somebody, clearly in the past, probably not in at least 6 months, but somebody in the past has been here, camped out here, been here at least briefly. Donovan looks at you. So this'll do?
Yes. Let's get comfy.
The openness of it allows you to have Taish inside as well. You can see that it gives you and your companions enough room to gather in the rear of the barn near the stove, which quickly Lori stocks with some of the, thankfully, the dry wood that was covered by the roof of the barn. Place probably doesn't have many years left before its timbers will fall, but you certainly don't feel like you're in danger of having it collapse on you at this point. Get some rest.
Yes. Get Taish comfy, brush her, talk to the bird, get Rudlin resting. Prayers, healing. If Brother Dominic's got any healing to hand out, I can certainly use a 20 spot.
Dominic takes some time after you, while you're tending to Taish, he comes over to you. You can see that Hrudlin sits close to the iron stove, complaining of the cold for the first time that you've heard him since you've gotten here to the Falkovnia. You can see his arms. He wraps his arms about himself. Father Dominic approaches you. What happened to him in there, inside the cabin?
He got attacked by a ghost. They're the worst.
The specter touched him.
Yes, I believe so. But I don't know.
He's got scars on his neck, his side. I don't know how much I'm going to be able to do for him. He's weak. I'm sure that it's the touch of those phantoms that has done this to him.
I think he lost 3 points of his strength core ability.
He is currently at 15. He was 1883. He is currently at 15. We'll let him rest. I've prayed over him all I can. The only other option I had, I used with you. A scroll that I've now used, it feels like years ago, to heal you once you had been touched by one of these. I believe it was a specter as well.
Yeah, don't you have like a restoration spell or something?
No, that magic is beyond me. That was a scroll, a pre-written spell that Tamora had gifted, that Tamora had deemed lucky enough for me to stumble upon. I used it to heal you, but I won't be able to replicate that magic with him. He just needs rest. I think rest will likely, help him at least some. What is it you plan on doing?
We're going to infiltrate Lekar with the primary objective of retrieving the child, which I'll believe it when I see it, but that's what led us here. And while we're there, I'm going to have to feel out the town. But I'd like to make our impact. I'd like to start planting some seeds for faith to take a foothold here. I'm not sure how I'm going to go about that yet. I think I'll have a much better feel for what my opportunities are when we're just amidst these people. I don't even know what to.
Who's going into Lekar with you? You can see he looks over again as if to make sure that none of your companions. The only companion that's watching is you can see Donovan. He seems like he's out of earshot, but you can see clearly he's sitting near the stove, not far from Rudland.
I think we decided it was going to be 3. We had already talked about this. Stanislaus, because of his obvious ability to blend in here. Myself and I think it was Donovan we planned on bringing for his ability to help us maybe out of tight situations. I don't know.
Yeah, something.
But I guess we should ask Donovan how he feels about that.
Well, I just at this point taking Rudland, I'm afraid what might happen to him, but you would know best. I'm as much as I would like to go with you, if the choice is to leave Jennifer and Lori here, I wouldn't want to leave them unattended. And Lekar's not far from here, correct?
No, who? Yeah.
You can roll your. What's your ability? Your direction sense? Is that what it is, or what's it?
I do have direction sense. Yep. Here, I'll roll a d20.
Yep.
13 direction sense. I have it as a 14, which is probably my wisdom. So.
Yep. Now you're familiar with this area of northern Falkovnia, much more so than southern Falkovnia, based on your time spent here. Well, now 2 decades ago, but you know, while you haven't been in this particular barn, you're like, no, we're an hour, maybe even a few minutes less outside of the capital of Lekar. It's almost unlike some of the other, like Mordenshire, where the villages seem to kind of just spill into each other. Lekar is much like it's urban and there's no suburbs. It's like there's a city and then it immediately transitions into farmland and open country kind of around it. There are tiny villages and towns smattered throughout Falkovnia, but just an hour outside of Lekar are farms and woods, and and it seems almost deliberate. Most folk choose to take shelter in the larger cities or towns, and there are few that live outside of the farmers and hunters that live beyond city walls. So you pretty much know, like, you could get to Lekar in less than an hour from where you're at right now, given where you think you are on your map. And that seemed to be what Stanislaus had indicated to you as well when you had discussed his uncle's farm with him previously. So you have tended to Taish. She is fed. You reaching the iron stove and the tiny kettle that Jennifer has placed on it, opening the pouch that now contains probably days worth of Van Richten's curative. You look at it, Horrocks, you can see the leather all the way down to the bottom, and the herbs crushed. They've gotten finer the deeper you've gone into the pouch.
I'm going home.
And
I'm having this kid and going home.
So, with that, Stanislaus finally comes over to the stove with you. The rest of the group, having received word that essentially you guys are going to be bedding down for the night, he comes over and meets you, stands next to the stove, rubbing his hands together and holding them out to the iron, getting some warmth, tucks his gloves into his belt. He has returned to wearing his armor He has folded Brother Dominic's cloak or robes and given them back to them. He's now wearing his armor again. He joins you next to the stove.
Does anyone in our party have they shown any proficiency with herbalism?
Well, isn't that interesting? Yeah, there are 2 people in your group.
I thought so. So I'm going to show them this stuff, and I'm going to say, hey, if we run into either out in the wild and have the opportunity to pick some of the components for this, or I'll actually ask Stanislaus, and I'll say, if there's a place in Lekar where I can get herbs like this.
He looks at the pouch. Both Father Dominic and Jennifer have experience, and Jennifer herself has actually worked in Van Richten's shop in Mordenshire for periods over the last 10, 15 years.
Well, then definitely have her. I mean, she probably knows what I'm drinking just from being around me while I'm handling it. So have her review it again, and let's get everyone on the same page. Just that I need that, and I probably wouldn't, even if we left tomorrow, I probably wouldn't make it back in time to replenish this. So I'd like to
call a meeting.
Procure it out in the field if we can.
You're gonna call a meeting with all your traveling companions. You kind of, now that everybody's sort of settled, Stanislaus walks up while you're looking into this pouch, getting ready to fill the tin cup that you've been drinking this out of, knowing that you probably have less than a week's worth of this herbal remedy, which has worked miracles in keeping your nightmares at bay. Although with today's discovery of, is there something wrong? Like, is there
not weak?
Is there a barrier? Is something happening? That is preventing me from channeling my faith? Like
something's starting to happen. It might just be this. We might be in proximity to something right here, or maybe we caught something's attention and it's upon us, or I don't know. I'm gonna turn my camera off for a minute here.
So, can I keep going?
Yeah.
Okay. So you call kind of a group meeting to review what your plan is. Stanislaus clearly was coming up to talk to you, but you take the lead, turn to the rest of the party, and you can see that you immediately have everyone else's attention focused on you. And Donovan's the first one to speak up. So where do we go from here? And you first, want to go into explain, still holding this pouch in your hand. Say to Jennifer, how are you gonna say something to Jennifer specifically about the?
Well, I'll say that your uncle prescribed this tea to me, these herbs. You're familiar with them, and I'll show them to her.
Oh, I'm very familiar with them. I helped. It was after my trip to Demetlieu that I assisted. I told Rudolph adding the tiniest hint of the nightshade would, it's poisonous in other circumstances, but in the smallest of amounts, it would improve the strength of this. Are you having spells? And when she says spells, she doesn't mean the magical type.
No, but I need all the help I can get, and this tea seems to be not a cure, but it keeps problems at bay, so...
I know what's in Uncle Rudolph's tea. But it would require a trip to an herbalist. I doubt we would be able to find everything that would be required to replicate it out here given the current climate. There is an herbalist several within the walls of Lekar. They rely on these herbalists here as there are no priests to heal the sick. I can take you to one of these places, or if you were to give me the list of things that would be needed.
No, that's a perfect place we should go, actually. Good idea. We need, well, if we have the opportunity to. It's not our primary objective in the city, but yes, that's a good. I think if herbalists are the healers these people go to, then that's probably a great place to start with connecting with some of the folk here. So we'll make that objective be while inside the city.
That said, Donovan interrupts. That said, who's going?
I think you, myself, and Stanislaus.
You can see Rudin like turns his head and looks at you. Lori starts to like lean forward, and you can see that Donovan just looks at her, and she leans back.
Wait, Horrocks calls him Stan.
Stan.
Don, Stan, and Henry.
How long are you going in for? Rudlin finally says.
It depends. We might have to be there. Actually, no, I know the answer. No longer than it takes to retrieve the child. That's the primary objective. If we are there for however long we are there for, we will also try to get a feel for the people within the city.
Yes, this is, and we will be able to, as long as we enter and exit the city, is under the cover of night. We will be able to come and go as you deem fit, Horrocks. Stanislaus interjects. There is a breach in the southern wall. From there, we will be able to enter this the city almost freely. There's few guards stationed in the southern area of the city.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
As we had briefly discussed before entering through the gates, armor and arms are not permitted unless you are a soldier. We have armor and arms.
Well, you're a soldier, right? Will you be going in as a soldier?
I think that in some circumstances it would be best to take advantage of my status within the Talons, should we be confronted or unfortunate enough to run into the guards. Also at night, within the laborers' quarters, there are few patrols, but there are some. Should we run afoul of some of them, I perhaps would be able to convince them to let us continue on. Although,
I'll slap him on the back and say, "That's why I have you here."
there are suits of armor that we have used in the past, and he mentions the suits that you guys had, the Talon armor and soldier armor that you guys had used before. You could, should you choose to, you could wear it, but this, unless you wish to enter under a different way, should you wish to keep your sword and armor, this is the only safe way for us to enter. There's a breach in the southwestern section of the wall that leads right into the laborer's quarter. At night it is poorly protected. Vlad is chosen to focus his attention on the north and northeastern walls of Lekar. That is where the repairs have been ongoing. And Lekar's an old city, dude, and it shows its age. the wall, a high wall that surrounds it, its mortar has grown old and has begun to deteriorate. It is being repaired, but it would appear that, based on what Stanislaus is telling you, that the northern and northeastern portions of the wall are being repaired first, which makes sense in that in this point, Falkovnia is really only at war with one nation or one country or one domain, Darkon, which lies to the north. It seems probably not fearing anyone from an invasion from Wardenshire or Borka or Dementliu has allowed Vlad to focus his energy on Darkon. So there's a breach in the southwestern portion of the wall. I'm confident that we will be able to enter the city, come and go as we please, at least during the night. There is a curfew, though, moving about at night. It does, if we are seen, it will arouse the suspicion of the guards.
And there's a breach in the wall that'll allow us to move freely.
Yes, this breach came up during my last trip to Lekar before traveling south to Zugtaus. I was informed that this breach would be the last to be repaired. It was a rather large breach in the wall. I'm sure that we will be able to enter. It will likely be poorly protected, especially since I would believe that Vlad has started moving troops north towards the Darkon border in preparation for the war at hand. And you know, based on your conversations with Gondagal, there is going to be another Dead Man's campaign, essentially, to the north. So that makes sense to you. Roll a wisdom check.
Wisdom check.
Yeah. Given your knowledge of your history with Vlad, having been, involved, having reached
Nails his wisdom check.
Having been involved as a colonel in his army, hidden an assassin essentially. This sounds like Vlad's sort of standard MO. If he does have a weakness, is that he's consistent. He seems to repeat the same mistakes, but he does that in everything. He does the same things. If the Treaty of the Four Towers, as they called it, has essentially prevented him from attacking any of the other four nations that Falkovnia borders on, he is going to focus all his attention on Darkon. And you know that Aslan is never going to sign a treaty. It's the border you fought on, just north of Stangengrad, and it's probably become the focus of why he's been kidnapping women, children, to refortify his army to launch yet another campaign to the north, trying to invade Darkon. And that seems to be the opportunity that you and Gondagal, seems to be something that you and Gondagal see as an opportunity. Should this may be an opportunity for one or both sides of the war to be weakened enough that you guys can have an impact on how things play out on that border. But first and foremost is finding Martha Weathermay, and this could take you, say, during the day. I would say we should remain within the barn. There's a road not far from here that is traveled by many soldiers during the day. After, say, 5 bells, we should be safe to move through the land and at least see the walls of Lekar before we enter, so you can see the breach that I am describing. I would recommend that we stay within the walls of the barn until the sun is close to setting, so tomorrow, as the troops on the roads are there many. And that sounds right to you, Horrocks, as well. You know, there's a lot of traffic in and out of Lekar. There are merchants that are brave enough to travel here from Demetliu, Borka, even Mordenshire, that and they're welcome, although they're not allowed to wear armor or carry arms, but they are welcome here in Lekar, especially now, because they bring much needed supplies for Vlad's war machine. This is just suggestions that I would make. I will do as you wish.
No, the information is invaluable. Thank you, Stanislaus. So, tell me again, what was the time?
So I would say that we should remain hidden. Well, those that stay behind should remain hidden at all times. Should one of the patrols detours through this area, it would put all of us, all of your companions, at risk. So we are close to Lekar. There are at least 3,000 soldiers contained within the walls. Even the strongest group of men would fall to those numbers. But I would think after 5 bells we will be able to. I know the way through the woods from here to the fields outside of the walls of the capital. I will take you there should you wish.
I can tell Velasco to keep a watch out above where this stable is at. And then if he spots something, have him come in and, be vocal to the people here. And then instruct them that if Velasco comes back being all vocal, that they should vacate, go hide, at least briefly but I don't know how well they'd be able to hide Taish, unless they're just using cover of darkness. But
this probably was not happen here. My uncle is valuable in that he feeds many of Vlad's troops. They rarely come on to his land, but that is not to say that this is never. And Horrocks, you feel like it seems like no matter where you go in the Corps, you draw attention to yourself because of who you are. So that part of it kind of sticks in your head. You're like, if there was, is it possible that Vlad can somehow sense that you're here or know that something, and how much can he know? You take some comfort in knowing that he, unlike Strahd, is not a mage, and he's actually not very fond of mages. He has a particularly low tolerance for
but
mages.
He's a Dark Lord, and this is his land, so I'm like a salt in the wound.
We should be able to find the burrow within several hours once we get in. I think I know where we can begin looking. So once we get within the city, there are several herbalists that we can find. The better ones are not within the laborers' quarters. There are some within inside of the rest of the cities that would likely be better stocked, but this would be your decision. We will find safety within the walls as long as we mostly move about at night. Lekar is a big city. And it is. It's a big city. It's one of the biggest in the Corps. Like, you can take some comfort in that once you're inside, that especially inside of the laborers' quarter, you'll have a lot of opportunity to, it'll be easier for you to move about. Although if you move outside of the laborers' quarter, where it sounds like some of the better herbalist shops are located, you'll be a little bit more limited in the way that you move around. But so I'm going, Donovan says. Stanislaus, and you?
I think it's best.
I would agree. You can see Lori like starts to talk, and Donovan like puts his hand out, doesn't even look at her, puts his hand out on her arm, and she sits back down. Rudlin's just staring at you as if he's following. He clearly doesn't look happy, but they're just. You hear Jennifer lean into him. They're just going in to look around for the first time.
I'll say to Rudlin, I'll say, what? Someone's got to protect the women in Taish.
He looks at Jennifer, who's already reached out and touched his arm. He's like, yes, that duty's mine. Good then. We should all get a good night's rest. Donovan chimes in finally. This is wise. We should sleep. Keep watch. As I will take first watch, should everyone agree. Donovan's like, whatever. It's clear to you at this point that Stanislaus has earned, at least at face value, most of your companions' trust.
Yeah.
And is there anything special you want to do?
Well,
other than pray?
ask,
and you can bind wounds, dude. I don't think you bound wounds. You still are down some hit points. Where are you at as far as your hit points currently?
Where's my character guide?
I think you got some. You were at 39, and you got 17. I think.
Sounds right.
Want to use your reroll?
I didn't change it on my. Well, we are coming up on the. Yeah,
we're about done. You were at 39, so 30. What's 39 and 17? That's doubled it.
Double.
39 plus 17, 56. Plus your bind is 58. And Father Dominic uses most of his cure spells on Frudlin, but he does pray with you prior to going to sleep. And
wait, what did you say the
You're at 58.
58? I think it's a little more than that.
Is it? I thought you were at 39.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Plus 17
is
56.
Son of a bitch.
Plus 2 is 58. Plus, let's see, 8 and 6 is 14. No, wait, don't add it yet.
Adding it.
Plus 11. So 69? And Father Dominic does plan on praying to try and restore you the next day as well. So, is there anything you want to do that night? Because I can do that now. Other than take your.
I don't have any spells to cast. I just have to pray, take care of the horse.
Take your watch.
Take a watch. I already prompted them on how to communicate with Velasco while I'm gone, because he shouldn't come in either. And I mean, that about covers it. I mean, I might come up with, if my watch overlaps with Stanislaus, I'd probably come up with more questions about.
If you have any, that's fine. You can totally.
He's more familiar with the city of Lekar than I am, right?
Oh yeah, he lived there for a period of time. You've only visited.
I mean, I would have him like drawing a map, at least in the air, of here's where that herbalist is. This is where the barrow is.
He tells you that there is an herbalist not far from the outside of the laborers' quarter. He seems to be concerned about going outside of the laborers' quarter. You were never in the laborers' quarter, in that it's kind of the one third or 1/4, 1/4 of the city that's poverty stricken. It's where all of those and it border all those that are really camp service soldiers or service laborers, the people that rebuild the walls. Everyone else lives outside of that area, and but the price to living outside of it is why you're better protected, because there is a criminal element in Lekar because it's a big city. But outside of the laborers' quarter, it's much less. The area is much more patrolled. The soldiers are a lot more vigilant outside of the laborers' quarter. So it's obvious to you that Stanislaus feels most comfortable knowing now that he's a traitor. If he's caught and they can identify who he is, which they should be able to do relatively easily, he's going to get impaled. He will slide down the stick. So he does seem concerned about, he seems pretty insistent about moving about at night, entering through what he calls the breach, a hole in the wall or holes in the wall in the southwestern portion of Lekar, and moving him and trying to avoid leaving the laborers' quarter. Luckily, he says, the burrow, the tavern where you are supposed to meet the contact, Hathril is what she was called by the vampiress that you had met with, is within the laborers' quarter. Hang on one second. So Stanislaus seems pretty insistent about his concern about moving around, and given your experience with the city, nothing he said seems to be misleading. You've been to Lekar, and it sounds accurate. That said, other than the next morning, your night goes without any incident. The next morning, Father Dominic is praised specifically over you and Frudlin once again, and he does heal you an additional 14 hit points. So I think that puts you somewhere around 83. That sound right?
Let me see. What'd you say? 14 more?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 83.
So you notice that Hrudlin still seems gimped, but he shows a little less wear today, and that the actual wounds he had suffered, but clearly the necrotic touch of those phantoms has scarred him. It'll probably take some time, if it will heal at all, for his strength to return to him. And he seems a bit down about it the next day. But the day passes, and you spend a lot of time. What do you want to spend the majority of your day doing? Spend time with Taish? Spend time with in prayer? You're feeling like the connection that you have with Tamora is muffled, almost gagged here. It's unnatural. You haven't experienced it in some time, but something, if it's this location or something else.
All I can do is pray about it and see if, you know, something reveals itself to me. Other than that, I have to focus on the task at hand. So I can't put like my, I thought about casting a sanctuary or protection spell just to see if I can break whatever's going on. But I kind of need to save those opportunities for dealing with whatever contingencies happen in the city. So I just got to focus on getting in there, making contact, finding the child. That's all I can focus on.
Roll a wisdom check.
Is what I would do.
Yeah, roll a wisdom check.
Another strong one.
Ooh. You spend most of the day in prayer, Horrocks, and you do find it somewhat comforting in that you've had hours now. The time that you haven't spent with, you spent some time with both Taish and Belasco and your companions having lunch, but you spend most of the following day in prayer, and you get the sense that there's something happening. It's not here, but there's something happening. You keep getting this foreboding. You keep going back to your time spent on the northern border during the Dead Man's campaign, and you can remember looking across the river north of Stangengrad in northern Falkovnia that separated Falkovnia from Darkon, and seeing the land of Darkon, and it seemed almost as if dark clouds, and you're almost convinced now that it was magical in nature at the time, but seemed to hover over those lands. And you keep, as you pray, you keep seeing that same image in your head, standing outside of your tent at the front line of a battle that's about to occur on the border of Darkon, and looking out at this kind of gloom that seems to almost start right at the border of Darkon and go back into darkness. That image is if something in Darkon, something unnatural is happening in Darkon now, and you're convinced to some degree that it's somehow impacting what you're experiencing here, even this far south in Lekar.
That makes more sense. Yeah, that actually makes sense somehow.
But that said, your prayers are eventually interrupted with a hand on your shoulder. Donovan leans over. Hey, it's nearly 5 bells. You've been at it for hours. Your knees got to be killing you. Come on, get up. It's time to go.
All right, let's go.
You rise. You can see that all of your companions are on their feet. Stanislaus stands. None of you have packs at this point. Donovan has a small pack, which you know is usually contains some thieves' tools, links of rope, a lantern, some of the things that he's seen necessary. You can tell through the wide cracks in the barn that the sun is setting and it is now the next afternoon. You're blessed with another relatively clear day, and that there's no bad weather, and it's even more temperate today. You can even hear the dripping of water. What little snow remained on the roof of this barn now leaks between its shingles and drips down onto the earthen floor of this barn. Taish nuzzles you as you step up, preparing to leave, almost as if she senses it. Belasco rocks back and forth on her back as Taish approaches you. As usual, she's not confined in any way within the barn here. And the rest of your companions gather. Those not leaving with you gather to show you support.
Connect with Belasco one last time, saying, so you got it, right? Circle around and let them know Stay here. Good boy.
He
My
responds
favorite part.
as if understanding. You're always amazed by the intelligence as he flaps his wings. You can see he's actually found a hole in the roof big enough for him to pass through, and he actually vanishes through that hole. Tice seems a
Nice.
little more insistent on affection from you, nuzzling you
So
with her
wait,
mane.
is Stanislaus going to carry my sword then? Does that? I'll discuss it with him. Like, did that seem natural or?
It's just, we are entering after dark through the breach. You can carry your sword and weapon, but just to realize, should we be confronted or cornered by the guards once within the walls, it will probably result in the fight. None within the walls that are not soldiers are permitted to wear armor or carry arms. This is why I thought it best for us to move about after curfew. We will have the advantage of the laborers' quarter is poorly patrolled after dark. Vlad cares not for the people there. He sees them as weak, infirmed.
All right. Gun too. Bring my gun. My big old gun. Because I do want to be able to survive a fight, and we do want to keep in mind as we move through the city, keep ourselves, always have a path back to that breach in the wall so we can escape. So, I mean, we could even do a good amount of like guerrilla tactics, getting in and out through the breach. Maybe we can find another way out so we can add some variety to our ability to get in and out. Once we're in there, maybe other things will become obvious.
There is more than one breach within the city. This one is one I am familiar with, and I know that it is in the laborers' quarters. This is how I know that it will not be protected as well as the other holes within Vlad's walls. So, all of your friends, Dominic first, then Jennifer, Prudland, Lori is last to kind of come up and give you a hug, and you can see Donovan's like, we're not going to be gone long. He reassures her, probably be back before morning, if not, definitely within the day. We're not going to stay in the city any longer than we have to.
That's true. But we will stay as long as we have to retrieve the child.
If something should happen, you can see Donovan looks at you and then looks at the rest of them. If anything should happen within the walls that would prevent us from coming out, if we can, we'll send word. Keep you appraised of what is going on within the walls. If any of us can leave and come back to communicate that with you, we will. And you can see he looks at you as if to approve or disapprove his statement.
Oh, of course.
This should be something that we should be able to do. The dark is a friend when passing through in and out of the city of Lekar. I would not expect to see us during the day. You can see Stanislaus now addresses the group as well. A little bit more comfortable now after traveling with you guys for a few days and kind of receiving your approval. You can see he speaks a bit more freely among your friends. It will be difficult to leave the city during the day as many of the gates are well manned and the breaches are patrolled, but at night we may be able to come and go as we please, as we are only 3 men. We should be able to do as Donovan has said. And now we should go. We have but maybe less than an hour of light. I'd like to show you the wall and the breach before the sun sets. He says to you, Horrocks.
Let's go.
And with that, Horrocks, you, Stanislaus and your oldest friend, Donovan, trudge on into the snow outside of the barn. You hear, as if recognizing that you're leaving from atop the barn, Belasco calls to you a last time. You can almost hear him saying how much he's going to miss being around you as you trudge, not through any obvious road, but just trudge off into the woods. You cross several more fields, and then to your left, to the west, you actually come upon a tree line that the three of you use as cover, and you can see a road from here, Horrocks, and the first among you, let's see, 1 and 2 is you. Donovan says, get down, get down. And you can see he crouches next to a tree. You're kind of following another row of trees that breaks up what appear to be several fields. He says that Stanislaus, an experienced soldier, immediately drops to a knee behind a large rock. What are you going to do?
I'll follow suit.
You do. And as you do, you can see 2 columns marching. Even at this distance, probably a quarter mile, you can actually hear the rhythmic marching as Falkovnian soldiers, you estimate 50 of them, Horrocks, come around a bend through some trees, and then along the side of this open, well, what's probably a grain field, but is now just a flat area of snow. You see them moving at the front. A standard bearer carries a black standard, the red hawk's head fluttering from the top of its mast as he leads this group. One single soldier on horseback is at the very front of this. They are traveling north towards Lekar, and you watch, as does Donovan, and you can actually see sort of the nervousness on Donovan's face, although you, at this distance, you're like, yeah, they wouldn't see us even if we were standing up. But you can see Donovan and Stanislaus both watch from crouched positions behind rocks and trees as these 50 men march north following this single mounted soldier. We are close now, Stanislaus says. Keep going.
Well, if it's safe to go, we can certainly pad the time there.
Oh no, it's never safe. You wait until they're a good distance ahead of you, Horrocks. And then you and your 2 companions follow along this tree line, and again through several fields, always tending to stay close to cover as Stanislaus, sort of knowing this general area a little bit better than you, sort of is walking along. The 3 of you are able to travel in a kind of a tightly packed little group, but he is definitely leading you at this point towards Lekar, and a short distance from what he says, so we are coming upon the wall soon. We should be quiet, be mindful. Say our troops now, say could approach us at any time. And you can see he looks up, and you know there's probably about 20 minutes worth of daylight left, like real daylight. The sky is gray and that there are clouds, but the snow again allows a bit more vision. And finally, you approach the outside of the city walls of Lekar. All of the trees have been cut down from around the walls of Lekar. Towers and parapets periodically dot its tall stone outer wall.
Oh, nice.
Flagstaffs tall atop the towers on the southern end. And this wall does show the age that Stanislaus had described. Many of its the murder holes or slits along the tops of the towers, the stones have begun to fall away. Young trees, probably over the past year or two, have started to grow in the open ground between you and the wall. It'll be another half hour, 30 minutes before you can approach. But you finally see the outer wall of Lekar, Horrocks. No guards move about on the parapets that you see. Although looking to your left, you see Stanislaus moves about as if there are countless guards. Like, he doesn't seem to take anything for granted. As you peer out over this bleak wall, much of the mortar that filled the cracks in between the stones has fallen away now. It's pushed out by ice and snow and rain. And you can see that there are several areas where probably flags bearing Vlad's standard once flew. The poles now are vacant. The walls appear unoccupied. But Stanislaus's concern is obvious when it comes to moving about openly. The place we are looking for is a breach. It's to the west of here. We should not venture any closer for fear that they will see us from the wall. There are not many troops, but those within those murder holes, they are vigilant for fear that they will slide down the spike. You know, the soldiers all are aware, just like Vlad's enemies. If a soldier were found laxed, it's more likely that he would be executed than disciplined in any other way, which is why Vlad is constantly trying to reinforce his army. He kills half of them himself. So, you have arrived at Lekar, Horrocks. It is 11:30. Time flies when I'm having fun. You want to pick this up next time?
Yep.
Sounds good. So, hope you had a good time.
Lots of fun.
You have. This is pretty awesome. Can't wait for you to get to the breach and finally see the interior of the car. Going to be cool. So,
can't wait.
Thanks for joining me. Can't wait for our next game and get together then.
You know it.
All right. Good night.
Peace.